Good morning, good evening, and welcome everyone to this session of TEMS webinars. We are privileged to have the president of IEEE TEMS, Andy Chen, with us, along with our distinguished speaker, Dr. John Keppler, who is a professor at Stanford University. We welcome you all and hope you have a great time in today's session.
Today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. John Keppler. He leads the technology trainings in Stanford. He has been, I know him for more than 10 years. Oops, it's just going too fast. I have known him for more than 10 years. He is also developed the professional training for certificates for actually computer societies. He lead the team, and part of the thing I worked with him was develop those programs, and he was the one that managing the body of knowledge, Street Box, IT Box, and he also brought in the SOPHIA International Skills Framework for Information Age. Now, most people knows John on that, but I know him a lot more. John taught in Stanford University, also in a couple other, two, three others, technical institute, and he actually conducted trainings all across the world, in England, India. So I've been collaborating with him for several of them. He's a real estate developer, and he manages and property management and constructions. He's also one of the smartest guys I know. He developed an AI system to predict the stock market. The fluctuation goes up and down. The more versatile, the better he can predict the behaviors. He also an entrepreneur. Yeah, he owns a restaurant, and because of that, every time I talk with John, we go through different part of the world and the cities. One thing for sure, I can always ask John for the best restaurant in town, whichever town it is. He's always be able to find one that's very interesting, including the one in the picture that took me to nitrogen baked ice cream in Orange County. And if you ever stop by Maryland, the Baltimore, you have to ask John where to get the crabs. He took one of these steamed crab house. It was a meal of two members. So I always enjoy traveling with John, and John is a very good speaker. So without further ado, here's our keynote speakers, John Keppler. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for the kind introduction. Andy has always been a great friend, and I'm delighted to be here this morning and to conduct the presentation for you. I would also like to welcome everyone who has joined us. This is certainly an interesting topic, and a topic with significant impact on all of our lives, no matter where you are in the world. COVID has certainly made some major ripples around the globe, and it's not over yet. And we are going to do some crystal ball gazing this morning and take a look at some of the things that we anticipate are going to be changing in our lives, and look at the things that have already, in fact, significantly changed. We're going to look at it from the perspective of paradigm shifts. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just discussing the concept of paradigms and what paradigm shifts are. But before we do that, I want to engage you in a simple question. We want to get your opinion on how long you feel COVID will continue to impact our lives. So if you will indulge us for a moment here, we have just a quick survey. if you could visit the website up here on your phone or on your computer and use the code, and then help us sort of anticipate when you would expect COVID to vanish. Do you in fact think it'll be over by the end of this year, the end of next year, or perhaps beyond 2021? So let's
John, before you go forward,
yeah,
we don't see your screen.
not sharing your screen.
We haven't seen your screen yet, so you have to share.
Okay, sorry about that.
Do the share again like you did last time.
Okay, I will. Give me a moment. I didn't realize that you weren't on board, so let's do this. Okay, so hopefully you can
we can see now. We can see you now. If you can do a full screen, then you're ready to go. Yep,
all right.
That's great.
Okay, good. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. All right, so back to COVID. And here's the question where I will ask for your input. How long do you anticipate COVID to continue to impact our lives? And really, we're just looking at three basic responses. This end of this year, December 2020, December 21, end of next year, or do you in fact anticipate that the impact, or not the impact, I should say, the virus itself will continue to be around beyond 2021? So let's get a perspective from the audience. And it's really quite simple doing this survey. Please visit the website above and use this code, and then hopefully we'll begin to see the responses come in the next minute or two. Andy, and you'll have to let me know if the links are in fact working, Andy.
Okay, is it a www.MERIT?
MENTI.com.
Okay, I'll try.
It's working. I just completed the survey as well.
Very good. That's interesting. None of the responses are popping up. Sometimes that does happen. So I am going to share with you what the actual experts in the field are telling us when we conduct this survey. The impact is going to be with us well beyond 2021. And so it behooves us really to begin thinking about what those impacts are. And we keep hearing the term new normal. What in the world is this new normal going to look like? So experts are telling us that COVID is in fact more difficult to find a vaccine for than the smallpox. There's also something that is unique about COVID, and that is the fact that it can spread without people knowing it. There are no visible signs to it, and that's why you have these super spreaders that can have no symptoms, but yet infect and impact a large group of people. And as long as the infections rage in one region or one country, the risk is existent for everyone else all around the globe. So, and we can sort of see that here in the US, some of the states that really had no infections early on are now starting to see a significant rise in the rate of infections within those states. So the impact has certainly been profound, and we anticipate that it is going to be around for a while. So what does this really mean? And what are some of the paradigm shifts that we've already seen? And what are some of the other paradigm shifts that are going to occur as this virus sort of continues to spread around the globe? So let's talk a little bit about what a paradigm shift is. Paradigm shifts require new thinking. And why do they require new thinking? Well, if we look at a paradigm shift, there are really two components to it. There's the paradigm, and then there's the shift. So what in the world is a paradigm? A paradigm is a pattern or a model that we've been working with. And it gives us a system of rules and regulations for how things should work. Ultimately, these rules establish a set of boundaries for us. So significant changes occur and happen when these established boundaries are broken and when the paradigms begin to shift. So rules that applied pre-COVID and post-COVID are going to be very, very different. And that's what we mean by a paradigm shift. The old rules will no longer apply. We're going to find that we're going to be living with a whole new set of rules that will govern our behavior, our work, our economic systems, our financial systems, and the impact continues on. And many people really haven't quite comprehended or grasped the magnitude of the paradigm shifts that are occurring. So what was once acceptable in the past really will no longer be tolerated in the future. What was successful will not be necessarily successful in the future. There's going to be a lot of changes. And we're already seeing a significant amount take place. I begin with one that many of us have experienced in our own jobs and in our work environment. More people are working from home. This is a significant paradigm shift for the workplace and has tremendous ramifications. What is this work from home doing? Just to give you an idea about the magnitude of this change, we have companies now that are considering continuing on with this practice regardless of how long COVID is going to be around. Facebook, Salesforce, some major players in the high-tech arena are already making working from home a permanent piece of their, for a large segment of their workforce. So this is going to continue on. This is not going to end. There have been many benefits that they have garnered from having people work at home and no significant decreases in productivity. So again, it's changed the way we think about how we work or where we work and the type of tools that we need for our work. And here's an excellent example of the magnitude of this impact. Many of you hopefully are familiar with Zoom, the tool that is used to for communications and meetings online. Zoom usage has skyrocketed from December 2019 to April 2020. In December, they had about 10 million users. In April 2020, over 300 million users worldwide. Now, if that is not a significant change, I don't know what is. Now, I will also give you another remarkable statistic. Zoom is now, Zoom the company, the corporate entity, is worth more than the world's 7 largest, biggest airlines combined. So their capitalization has tremendously increased. Take a look at what the chart looks like in terms of airline stock performance and the Zoom performance. It has really zoomed. Unfortunately, and not a good time to buy the stock. It's far too expensive at this point. But if you had purchased it early in March, you would have certainly made a significant chunk of money. This is what paradigm shifts do. They change the rules. Who would have imagined that one company would now be worth more than the 7 largest airline companies around the globe? Significant change. Now, working from home, that's not the only area where we see the paradigm shift. It has an impact on where people are choosing to live. People are rethinking their home location. And I can certainly tell you from my experience here in California, living in the Bay Area where the rents are quite high and the price of homes are quite high, a lot of people have started to look to moving away from the cities and away from the zone where the rents are so expensive and working remotely from remote locations. Now, this also has a significant impact on commuter transportation systems, on taxation also, because some people from California have actually, in fact, moved out to other states. And so they live in a state, but they're really employed by an employer in this state. And California is looking at changing some of the taxation laws to mandate that you pay taxes based on not where you reside, but where your employment is. So some major interesting shifts going on, again, based on the work from home. When workers can really live anywhere, the question is, why do I really need to live in a big, expensive city? The equation hasn't only impacted where people live and work on a daily basis. There's been a significant and tremendous impact on travel. I don't know if any of you have taken any trips recently, but the world of travel has completely changed. First of all, many people are opting not to travel, and they're using teleconferencing whenever possible. There are also many travel restrictions, places that one didn't even have to think twice about taking a trip to. I mean, I made frequent trips to London or Europe without having to worry about it because I didn't even need a visa. But now there are all kinds of travel restrictions throughout the globe. The whole concept of travel is going to see significant paradigm shifts. And I want to share with you now, again, some statistics from the airline industry and just a quick snapshot here of how scant the number of travelers are at a very busy terminal in San Francisco. This is unheard of. I mean, remember the lines that one had to experience when they were traveling. All that is changing. And even though the airline got a 25 billion stimulus, it's still expected to continue to contract. And they're experiencing some very difficult and hard times. Now, let me share with you just a quick video to show you that this video is prepared by the Wall Street, how the experience of travel has really seen some tremendous paradigm shifts.
Flying means going to the airport, dropping off your luggage at check-in, maybe buying a coffee in the terminal, and finally taking a seat on a crowded plane. That journey now looks to some travelers like a potential minefield for catching the coronavirus. And that's one big reason so many people have stopped traveling.
It's no secret that the travel industry has seen an incredible drop in demand.
I think it's important for them to put measures into place that can help travelers feel more comfortable.
The crowded spaces, shared surfaces, and necessary human interaction in airports and on airplanes all have the potential to spread the virus between travelers and ultimately between countries.
The airport experience, like many of our experiences today, are going to be transformed by these new technological capabilities.
So what is the industry doing to make us feel safe again? And how could that change the way we fly? Let's start at check-in.
The use of face masks by everyone is going to be the most important measure we can take to minimize the risk of transmission while traveling.
In India, passengers have to show they have a contact tracing app installed on their phones in order to enter the terminal. And at Delhi International Airport, luggage has to go through a UV sanitizing tunnel as well. Inside the airport, on top of disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer, some companies have started making prototypes for self-service kiosks that are touch-free. This one from Millennium Automation allows travelers to make selections by moving their head.
The evolution in that direction actually started significantly before the pandemic. The pandemic has added urgency to the greatest extent possible. If a touch is required, it's on your device, on your phone.
For those with luggage to check, kiosks that allow flyers to tag and hand over bags themselves could become the norm. But for now, many still require you to pass luggage off to an agent, which means standing in line. But now with all the basic social distancing accessories.
There are social distancing markers in all of the queue areas. There will be plexiglass shields at every station where an agent is available to assist a customer.
Next comes security. This is where some airports are trying to not only prevent COVID-19 transmission, but identify passengers that may be carrying the virus. London's Heathrow Airport is running trials of temperature scans to look for travelers with a fever. That said, a fever is only a symptom, not a confirmation someone has or doesn't have the virus. And Lufthansa plans to offer coronavirus tests to flyers in Germany. The airline says travelers will get results in about 4 hours.
9/11 birthed the TSA. We anticipate there is going to be something to ensure the customer's safe transit through air travel.
In the US, the TSA was already using facial recognition rather than manual ID checks to screen some travelers. But with a desire for more touchless tech, you might be seeing more biometric entry in the future.
To some extent, facial technology may come into it for those who are comfortable with it.
The TSA says biometric checks are quicker, but packed security lines still pose a transmission risk. One possible solution: security appointments. Montreal's international airport has allowed travelers to book a time slot online for years, and a similar system could help other airports avoid crowding. Once through security, travelers face the potential of crowded restaurants and shops. At the Port Authority's airports, flyers can use their phones to order food and retail items directly to their gate, rather than risk lines and further interaction. It's important for airports' revenues to get this right. One industry group estimates that airports bring in about $7 per passenger from non-aviation revenue. Now, that may not sound like much, but last year, 140 million passengers passed through the Port Authority's airports. And some brands, like Estee Lauder, have higher sales at major airports than they do in North American department stores. But just waiting at the gate may not be travelers' best option either, as crowds tend to form ahead of boarding.
If it were me, I would probably hang out somewhere else in the airport at a different gate and wait until they're boarding.
Delta is hoping to avoid the rush by boarding planes 10 flyers at a time, and they still have to be wearing those masks.
If customers do not have a mask, we will have masks and we'll have sanitizer available for them throughout the journey.
The plane itself presents one of the biggest challenges in avoiding the spread of the virus. For airlines, mitigation efforts start before travelers board.
We do electrostatic spraying prior to every departure. The spray will kill viruses on contact.
When boarding, Delta, like some others, is starting with passengers in the back of the plane to limit traffic jams in the aisle. And Singaporean airline Scoot is restricting the amount of hand luggage you can bring on board to avoid a scrum at the overhead bins. Once seated, travelers will likely have some extra space. Delta has, for now, banned the middle seat and is limiting the amount of passengers on board.
No airplane will be dispatched above a 60% seating capacity. So if there are 100 seats on board, no more than 60 customers on board the aircraft.
Still, that seating cap isn't in place for all airlines, and some travelers have reported crowded flights. And when the middle seat does return, it may be surrounded by dividers or facing the other way. The confined space makes onboard ventilation even more important to people. Good airflow is key to diluting the amount of virus potentially floating around.
We use filters called HEPA filters, the same filters they use in hospital ICUs and emergency rooms. Every 2 to 5 minutes, depending upon the aircraft type, the air on board the airplane is exchanged with outside air.
Some airlines are also eliminating meal services, in-flight magazines, and duty-free carts, while others, including Delta, are opting for pre-wrapped snack packages, all to minimize contact. For now, airports and airlines are able to implement some of these strategies because not that many people are flying, which is also due to travel restrictions and reduced flights. But the real question is whether airports and airlines will invest in these measures and whether they can afford to operate with them in the long run.
We are not going to give up on our level of safety. And if it means that we have got to completely re-engineer our processes in order to allow more to come and allow profitability to return, we are going to do it.
Until there's a worldwide standard, a lot of these crucial decisions will ultimately come down to the individual airlines and airports.
These measures have to be effective because if there is some outbreak on an airplane, then nobody's gonna want to travel anymore.
The impact on travel doesn't really stay with travel alone and the airport and airline experience. The ripple effects impact restaurants, they impact hotels, they impact car rental companies, and the list goes on and on. So the paradigm shifts that we see, even though they can be clearly visible in one arena, and it's obvious to see how it's impacting the travel experience itself, the ripple effects sometimes are not so evident or obvious. One of the things that we are seeing is, again, a tremendous increase in the number of business bankruptcies. And many of them are, in fact, restaurants and small businesses. Businesses that were once a household name will no longer exist with us. Already, we've seen Neiman Marcus, Macy's, Hertz, JCPenney, all file for bankruptcy. Now, normally we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60,000 bankruptcies per year. Now, look at 2020, what they anticipate and project for the number of bankruptcies that will be filed by the end of this year. Over 200,000 bankruptcies. That in itself will have a significant ripple effect on the economy, on employment, and also on restaurants, on travel. It all sort of links together. The new normal is anything but normal. Other stores that we are looking to cut back and curtail activity, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Beyond, or J. Crew, all these iconic brands are vanishing. Shop prices tumble as fashion and furniture retailers increase discounts. Another ripple impact of this is the rentals that are paid to the shopping center and the shopping malls. Many of the tenants, the commercial tenants, are unable to pay. And consequently, the shopping centers that are highly leveraged or have huge loans and unable to meet their mortgage payments are in turn filing for bankruptcy, which is also having a ripple effect within the financial sector. So the impact just goes on and on and on. There's an auto manufacturing impact as well. Ford, GM, and Fiat all have a sort of a steep decline in their revenues when car rental companies are just not buying. And they are some of the major buyers, but many of them are going under. There's no activity. And so once again, they're impacting the auto industry itself. Last year, Hertz alone bought 1.7 million cars, and that was about 10% of the production of the U.S. auto industry. So if that goes away, as Hertz goes out of business, we can only imagine what the ripple effect will be. Unemployment. Everyone has heard about the significant unemployment rates. We're hovering around close to 15% right now, and that's expected to continue to increase. And experts actually are projecting and predicting that 40% of these lost jobs will no longer be available post-COVID-19. So that in itself will have significant social impacts, economic impacts, and a drastic effect on society and how society functions. One thing that experts are also incredibly concerned about are the food banks and the pressure on the food banks as more and more people demand food and have no money to sort of pay for food. The number that you can see in this article is staggering. 54 million Americans are facing food shortages and maybe without food. This is nothing to sneeze at. These are incredibly significant changes, and we've only begun to see the full impact of these changes as they occur. Unfortunately, this negative cycle brings more negative pressure, means more layoffs, fewer people being recalled from furloughs, and fewer people finding jobs. And these ripple impacts, unfortunately, are likely to continue for several years. And as time goes on, you will begin to see more and more of these effects unfold. So let's go back to our idea of the paradigm shifts. Where are we going to see those? In almost every aspect of our lives. Mass extinction of plant life, mass extinction of animal life, forests, because of the devastating environmental impact. Capitalism itself is going to have to see some major transformations in the way things are done, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, climate change, and this is also very important because COVID is sort of a harbinger of what's to come. It's not the last virus we're going to see. There are, as a result of the climate changes that are happening in the environment, that are going to cause a rise in this type of a phenomena occurring again and again. Rise in conflict, we're already sort of beginning to see the seeds of that. Social unrest. And we're also going to see new technologies emerge, such as quantum technology, to try to address and deal with some of these issues that are popping up. Energy. The hope is we're going to see more of a shift towards renewable energy and less reliance on fossil. Again, I mentioned the technology and quantum. I'm going through some of these paradigm shifts quickly just to highlight what's on the horizon and some of the things that we can really expect are going to impact how we live and how we function. Financial service. Already, we are seeing significant changes in the financial industry. Many of them are going digital. Many banks are even looking at closing many of their branches. Because of COVID, no one wants to go to the bank, and all of their banking is being done online. And so now banks are questioning, why do we need so many branches? And once again, that is going to impact rent. That is going to impact real estate, commercial real estate that these banks occupy. Healthcare. A lot of pressure on healthcare has caused an explosion in telemedicine. No one is going to the doctor, or few people, unless it's very serious, go to the doctor, and telemedicine is on the rise. Education and training. Certainly, as they've shut down schools, universities, more virtual learning has been going on, and more programs are being conducted online. Major shifts are occurring in higher education and workforce learning. Colleges and universities that were highly dependent or are highly dependent on international students will simply not survive. As a matter of fact, the expectation is over half of the colleges and universities within the US are going to basically vanish over the course of the next 10 years. Robotics. As employers look for more distancing and trying to sort of avoid having to have employees work together in close proximity, they're going to look for more robotics and more automation. We're certainly seeing this trend take place in Amazon. We're going to see an increase in boot camps and shorter interval training. Also, because of the unemployment situation, we're going to see educational programs that offer income sharing agreements, meaning come get the education, and then after you get a job, pay us for the education through your wages. Retraining through these ISA programs. We're also going to start to see a lot of talk about space stations and space colonies, where now people are looking to go outside of the planet for new environments that might be safer for humanity. Globalization also is facing some serious and strong criticism. Supply chains are naturally changing, and free movement of people across the globe will never be the same. And the fact that the virus really is spreading as a result of globalization has soured a lot of people on the idea of globalization. Another impact that not many people are paying attention to is the falling dollar. And as the dollar continues to fall sharply, there is now a realistic threat. It may no longer be the reserve currency for the planet. And when that happens, that in itself is going to have its own dramatic effects. Forgive the noise in the background. There is construction where I'm at, and I need to have a chat with them. Anyway, when we look at globalization, there are three scenarios that experts are really forecasting. One is a great accelerator downwards, where the entire globe really is going to face some severe depression, and more countries are going to embrace the idea of isolation and lots of conflict on the planet. Hopefully, that's not the scenario that will pan out, but these are the scenarios that the Atlantic Council is predicting in a recent strategy paper. Another scenario is evolving a scenario where there's a Cold War between China and the West, and tensions in relationships between those two powers, and sort of a growing new alliance between China and Russia. Last but not least, I always like to have at least one optimistic scenario that the world will come together and will work to overcome this virus and be better prepared for future threats, and avoid conflicts and have solutions for some of the major problems that face us all as humans on this planet. So hopefully that's the scenario that we will ultimately encounter. As you can see, just from a brief presentation and a highlight of some of these impacts, there's going to be some major disruption that's yet to come. It will bring with it many challenges, and with every challenge, there are always opportunities. And opportunities demand innovative solutions, and this is where the brightest and the most creative minds really need to be engaged in finding those innovative solutions and in helping humanity navigate out of this particular crisis. With that, I will conclude my presentation, and hopefully we'll leave a little bit of time here for some discussion and a question-answer period. So please feel free to fire away any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. I have a question to begin with. What changes do you see happening, with the agriculture sector and supply chain in general, with respect to the agriculture sector itself?
The agricultural sector really has been experiencing significant changes, and not so much as a result of the virus, but as a result of climate change. And though that's not going to change in terms of, we haven't done anything really to reverse the climate change that we're experiencing on the planet. And if any of you have been following some of the recent data, Antarctica just experienced a 38-degree centigrade temperature, which is unheard of. So naturally, these climate changes are going to have a significant impact on agriculture. The other issue that is going to be impacting the agriculture industry, of course, is the inability to move goods and services freely from one zone into the next. So there are going to be some significant challenges when it comes to food and food supplies for the entire planet, not just for the US in the next few years.
Thank you. I have some questions which are coming in. There's a question from Caesar. This question goes like this. Besides teleconference systems, which other industry will boom in the near future?
Certainly, there are going to be some new industries that are going to emerge, and some of the things that we're already seeing in terms of industries that are flourishing. For instance, all of the industry sectors that are providing supplies for cleaning, for sanitization, and all of the related tools. Manufacturers of plexiglass have also been experiencing a tremendous boost. These are the short term. but the new ones are the ones that you really need to keep your eye out for. And these are usually the ones on the periphery. They haven't yet sort of surfaced or emerged, but if you keep your eyes open, you'll begin to spot them. There are some creative applications, for instance, in the food service industry now, where they are basically preparing meals, and then you get the meal, and instead of going to the restaurant, you cook it at home. But they create the meal and all the ingredients and package them together for you. There are also some restaurants now that are experimenting with the idea of creating cones that are placed above the table just to create an atmosphere for a few people that's safe so they could feel comfortable going to that particular restaurant. Those are just some examples of ideas that people are employing, and you will see a lot of new things sort of surface and pop up over the course of the night. I certainly can't predict all of them for you, but I will tell you that the major moves are also going to be in the travel industry and trying to find safer ways for travel, complete redesign of the concept of the airplane. We may be looking at travel in compartments instead of seats. Just some food for thought.
That's brilliant, actually. But my first question really was about the remote working, and I would have to comment that even though I'm a teleworker myself, and I'm an evangelist of of using the internet and Zoom and whatever, for me it's fine remote working. But for a lot of different industries, teamwork is essential, and people need to be face to face for working. I can only quote professor that educated me, Tom Allen of MIT, who was a big believer in the coffee pot and the teamwork aspect at MIT. So what's your opinion on that?
Certainly, human contact and human interaction is incredibly valuable and is not something to sort of belittle. However, there are times when restrictions are imposed on us because it's for our welfare and for our safety. So the telework or working from home is not being done by virtue of intention and sort of isolating people, but it's in virtue of necessity. Now, having said that, there are ways that people are looking to enhance the human interaction, even though it may be remote. And there are also new strategies that are evolving to better manage the teams and to keep teams communicating with one another and to keep the information free flow continuing. And I'll mention for you some tools also. Someone was asking about companies that are sort of emerging on the horizon. Certainly, we've seen a tremendous increase in the utilization of a tool like Slack. Microsoft Teams hasn't quite taken a stronghold yet, but it is emerging. Now, these are some of the tools that are intended to create better engagement among teams. There are also opportunities for creating events or games or sort of simulations to further enhance the human experience and increase to the interaction amongst teams. Again, I won't tell you that these are a concrete substitute for actual human interaction, but they are a way to mitigate the current challenges and the current situation that we are facing. So all in that realm, all is not lost. People are thinking along those lines, and certainly managers are having to readjust their style and the way that they manage when they are managing remote teams. I myself can tell you from my own personal experience, I have a fairly large team and they're all remote now. And we have, for instance, once a week, we will do a meeting where we will do breakout sessions. And the breakout session will just address one question where each of those individuals in the breakout with the other group will share with them something personal about themselves, just to continue that human interaction. So just as an example, last week, the question was, what was your favorite cartoon as a child? And we had a fun 15-minute, 20-minute exchange about that. So there are ways to overcome the remoteness.
Absolutely. I use Slack myself, and it's a great tool. I'm also, I think, in the software industry and in where you're developing innovation, the whole agile methodology embraces that, and you can actually for remote people to work quite effectively. But I guess my other question then later on was, let's go down to the meat factory, where currently there is a spate of coronavirus transmission, and that's because of the necessity. It's a high-skilled job. It's very physical, very exertive, and unfortunately, the teams are actually working right side by side. And this basically the option to automate. That's my other question. Automation of that is great, but that means the disruption of those low-paid workers in that space. That's yeah. And unfortunately, my question is that once the meat factories, Tyson, whoever, get used to using the robotics and the automation, they will have a saving from, and they won't want to go back to the old way.
You're absolutely right. There's no dispute there. And this is one of the ripple effects that I alluded to earlier. And this is why they anticipate that a good percentage of the people that have already even been furloughed are not going to come back to find jobs, because employers will find other alternatives and other solutions. And by the way, just to quickly share with you, automation is not the only solution to chicken processing plants and meat processing plants. One thing that they are looking at right now is reconfiguring the actual layout of the physical plant to create more distancing and to eliminate that close proximity and to try to reduce the risks that way, because some of the manual labor, the technology isn't there for robotics to do those tasks yet. And so that's another solution that people are looking at, the reconfiguration and of the actual real estate of how things are organized.
Thank you, Pat, for your questions. I have something coming in from Madhav Negi. His question is, a key problem is centralized AC. Are there any new designs that you think will replace this in the coming days?
And the answer is yes. There are all kinds of new designs now in terms of airflow, movement of air, and sort of completely revamping AC systems. And those are, again, some of the opportunities and some of those new companies that are on the periphery that are trying to present those solutions. None of them have taken a strong hold yet, but absolutely, that's definitely going on.
I have another question, Dr. John, if you don't mind.
My pleasure.
So, one of the hardest hit industries has been this ride hailing, Ubers and Lyfts and things like that. What do you see as the future of some of these ride hailing players in US and outside?
Give me a moment, I'll be right back because of the noise. I hate to impede progress, but the noise was just unbearable by the contractor. So anyway, I've addressed the issue, and please repeat the question.
My question was, one of the hard-hit industries has been, the likes of Ubers, Lyfts, where ride-sharing, was one of the upcoming industries, and then doing very well. Now, most of the people are thinking multiple times before booking an Uber or booking a Lyft. What do you think will be the future of some of these?
That's an excellent question, and the future of many of these, again, I hate to have a negative forecast, but Airbnb is already on its way to demise. Uber is not going to be far behind, unfortunately. There's also another interesting change as sort of people curtail their level of activity and movement. The need for these services is also dwindling. The fear of actually hopping into an Uber car where you don't know the driver, you don't know who was in that car before you, is also impeding people in terms of using those means of transportation. The entire transportation model is rapidly changing. I will quickly share with you sort of some anecdotal experience from living here in Palo Alto around Stanford. More and more people are using their bikes rather than cars. One, it's an opportunity for exercise, and it also avoids having to use public transportation. And one thing that we've also seen is cities that are trying to revive the restaurants are closing the actual public city streets to traffic. So cars cannot flow, but the restaurants then put their tables outside on the sidewalk and on the street, and they create patios so these restaurants can function and flourish, and people go to them using their bikes. Now, this is just small anecdotal evidence from one tiny city, but I anticipate that you will continue to see sort of similar types of solutions around other cities. And I think there are also some neighborhoods in San Francisco that are doing that, closing down streets completely and avoiding car traffic and relying more and more on bicycles or other means of transportation. So the outlook for Uber, Airbnb just is not good right now.
Does this also mean there will be an increase in automobile sales in the coming days with people trying to own their own, have own vehicles?
There's been an uptick recently in the sales of for cars, for new cars in particular. And the reason for that uptick, in my estimation, is not so much that people need more new cars, but because there have been some tremendous deals to be had on cars. Car makers, of course, have a huge inventory, and they're trying to, and if you notice, if you've been watching any of the ads, they're not even charging any interest for 5 years if someone buys the car. And there've been some real great bargains, and I think that attributes the uptick. A trend requires continuity. We'll have to wait and see if that really will continue or not. So also, as we see more and more people work from home and the need for commuting starts to diminish, the whole rationale for having a car, needing a car, and the car expense will also have to be re-examined. The purpose of my presentation really today is not so much to come up with the solutions, but to get us thinking about what might be, what if, and imagine if. My crystal ball is never the best crystal ball, but we have to gaze into the future and really start to try to anticipate what if, imagine if, and see what really will percolate and come out of this particular crisis, because it certainly is going to be significant. It's nothing to take lightly and think, oh, just in a year or two, things will be back to where they were a year from now.
Thank you so much, and I think we are on time. There is one last question which has come in, which we'll take and end the session. The question is from you, Daisy. The question goes like this: should we also consider the side effects caused by overuse of disinfectants? Should we turn to alternatives like self-cleaning materials right now?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question, because I really don't have a strong background in chemistry or all the different disinfectants that are out there. The one thing I will tell you is certainly don't follow any advice that tells you drink that stuff, or that's the cure. I've also read recently that there were 9 brands of disinfectants that actually were harmful because of the ingredients in them. So if anything, the lesson to be learned here is we need to be more vigilant and more attentive to the items that we consume, and keep in mind that there are going to be lots and lots of, what should I say, sort of charlatans that try to peddle things as cures or as disinfectants that really will not be legitimate types of decent products. So, buyer beware. We should always be on the lookout for those types of things, and I'm confident that there are many of them already on the market.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chan.
Sure.
I think no more questions are coming in, as well as, if there are any more questions, please feel free to send them out to us. We will coordinate with Dr. John and get back to you with the answers. And I think it's been a very thought-provoking presentation today. And you also reminded me of my time at Stanford a couple of years ago as a continuing education student at the campus. I've seen a lot of bicycles going around there, as well as ridden some of them. It's been great. It's been a great session today. Thank you so much for taking time early in the morning.
Very welcome. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I certainly wish all of you the best of health, and keep thinking about the future, and together, hopefully, we'll make it much better than the past.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining in. Have a safe rest of your day and take care.